From the Diary of Bill Lowie, Wednesday, November 18th. Yesterday we closed in at Saigon along with every UH-1B outfit in the central and southern part of the country. We were told that this would be the biggest troop lift in the history of war. This is General Khan's chance to show the kind of force that he can raise on short notice. Our takeoff time was set for 5:30 this morning and landing in the LZ by 0700. We picked up our first load of troops at Bien Hoa. There were over 100 troop ships in the formation plus the gunships. The U.S. Air Force dropped bombs and strafed the LZ for about 10 minutes prior to our landing. Then, our gunships went in 3 minutes before us. In spite of that, we were still fired at as we entered and left. 2 of our gunships were knocked down, but there were no injuries that I know of. 3 or 4 of our troop ships found holes when we got back, but none of them serious. Our second lift of the day was made at about 1200. We took 600 troops into 2 separate LZs. Our gunships made a few passes over our LZ before we were to land, and we were not fired on. The landing area was presumed to be fairly safe. However, we had 1 crew chief hit in the leg by a shotgun blast from about 200 yards away, and several of our ships were fired on in the LZ. On our return, we heard an explosion as we neared Tân Sơn Nhất Airport at Saigon no one thought too much about. Later, we learned that while we were taking 1,500 troops 30 miles from Saigon to fight the VC, one of them planted a bomb in the cafeteria at the airport and killed about 7 Americans. The wounded report is not complete yet. All in all, a very interesting day. In this diary entry, Popi recounts a day of intense and historic operations in Vietnam, offering us a vivid window into the complexities of the war effort. November 18, 1964 marked what was described to him as the biggest troop lift in the history of war, a monumental operation involving every UH-1B helicopter unit in the central and southern Vietnam. This operation was spearheaded by ARVN General Nguyễn Khánh, who was keen to demonstrate his ability to mobilize substantial forces on short notice. With takeoff set for 5:30, Popi and his fellow aviators began their mission at Bien Hoa, lifting troops into landing zones, LZs, as part of a vast formation. The scale was staggering. Over 100 troop ships, supported by gunships and U.S. Air Force bombers. The operation's choreography was obviously meticulously planned. The Air Force bombarded the LZ for 10 minutes, softening enemy resistance, followed by a strafing run by gunships. Strafing refers to a military tactic where an aircraft flies low over a target area and uses onboard machine guns or autocannons to attack ground forces or vehicles. The term typically applies to attacks designed to suppress enemy troops, destroy vehicles, or damage installations. Despite these efforts, resistance remained fierce. The second lift, which occurred around noon, brought new challenges. Popi's unit transported 600 troops to 2 separate LZs. Though the landing area was deemed relatively safe, sporadic resistance persisted. One detail underscores the asymmetrical nature of the conflict. While Popi's unit was moving 1,500 troops miles away to engage the Viet Cong, one insurgent planted a bomb in the cafeteria at Tân Sơn Nhất Airport in Saigon. This act of sabotage killed 7 Americans and wounded others, highlighting the Viet Cong's ability to strike behind U.S. lines even during major offensives. The involvement of General Khánh adds a political layer to this narrative. In late 1964, South Vietnam's leadership was characterized chiefly by its instability, with Khánh at the center of it. His push to showcase military strength was as much about asserting authority at home as it was about fighting the Viet Cong. General Nguyễn Khánh was a prominent yet controversial figure in South Vietnam's political and military history during the Vietnam War. Born in French Indochina, Khánh was educated in French military schools and joined the Vietnamese National Army during the First Indochina War. He rose to prominence during the 1960s, becoming a central player in South Vietnam's tumultuous politics. Khánh seized power in a bloodless coup in January 1964, ousting General Duong Van Minh and positioning himself as both Prime Minister and Chief of State. He attempted to consolidate authority and stabilize the nation, promoting nationalism and opposing communist influence, but his tenure was marred by infighting, public unrest, and struggles to unify the military leadership. Despite orchestrating major operations like the large troop lift described in Bill Lowie's diary, Khánh leadership was often criticized as indecisive and autocratic. He was ultimately overthrown in 1965 and went into exile to the United States, where he lived until 2013, when he passed away at the age of 85. His time in power reflected the broader instability and challenges faced by South Vietnam during the war. As I read Poppy's words, I'm struck by the stark contrasts of the day. Massive troop movements countered by the actions of a single saboteur. This juxtaposition speaks to the broader challenges of the Vietnam War. How do you fight an enemy that can engage on both a grand and intimate scale? The diary entry also invites us to consider the personal toll of war. Even in his understated tone, Poppy's descriptions convey the tension, exhaustion, and resilience of those involved. The danger was constant, yet missions continued, with little time to process events like the bombing at the airport. After all is said and done, he can only describe it as interesting. The photo I chose for today was taken from Poppy's helicopter as he was flying. Though it almost certainly does not depict the strafing or bombing he describes on this occasion, it does show an area on the ground in the midst of getting bombed. Once again, it's quite fantastic to see how he felt compelled to take a picture of something while flying. Good thing he had a co-pilot. It makes me think about the things I feel compelled to pull my phone out for or to snap a quick picture of. Knowing that his film was limited and he could get a bad shot, that makes the impulse to document this bombing all the more fascinating. I'm Alex Lowie, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of Dearest Suzie, and receiving messages from the past that my Poppy wrote exactly 60 years ago. I sincerely appreciate your time and interest. Please consider following the podcast on your preferred platform, and if you're enjoying it, I kindly ask that you take the time to rate the show and leave a review. Also, please follow the project on YouTube, X, and Instagram. All likes, comments, shares, and reviews will help grow the reach of this story. The links for these things should be in the description of this episode. Please feel free to email me at dearestsuziepodcast@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to say. I'd love to chat or to hear about your stories as well. Thank you for listening, and God bless.